We already talked at noon about the interesting first response of the Buddha to attaining samādhi, perfect awakening, not rushing off and telling everyone, but simply sitting down and enjoying the bliss of release for a full week in a deep samādhi, sitting motionless and completely immersing himself in samādhi, in the experience of release, of full awakening. And in effect, and I did that for several weeks, then a short while contemplating, and then another week. One can see that there's a kind of coolness, because craving, defilements, excitement, and in particular the delusion of ego, of I, me, mine, this is all gone. So it's very different from how people sometimes imagine it would be. Similar with the Buddha needing kind of the request of Brahma Sahampati to start teaching. Not immediately rushing off and telling everyone. I often feel when someone has this urge, this strong need to convert you and to teach you, to tell you, that usually doesn't come from a position of release, that comes from the desire, ego, the defilements, sometimes quite wholesome intentions, but not freedom from attachment and so on. And today I wanted to share another interesting one, showing the attitude, the mind states of a truly awakened being, the Buddha. This is in the Anguttara Nikāya, the Numerical Discourses, one part of the Pali Canon which is organized simply by the number of subjects discussed in that sutta. And this is a book of fours. It simply means this is a collection of suttas which have four items as their subject matter. And the whole thing is simply called Revere. Revere is a little village where the Buddha lived close by when he attained samādhi, what we now call Bodh Gaya, near the Niranjana river. Number 21 in the Book of Fours. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove on Nata Pindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, those bhikkhus replied, the Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, on one occasion I was dwelling at Uruvela by the goatherd's banyan tree on the bank of the Niranjana river, just after I had attained full enlightenment. So it wasn't exactly at the moment of enlightenment, because that would have been the Bodhi tree. The goatherd's banyan tree, Ajapala Nigrodha, was one of the other locations in the subsequent weeks where the Buddha has sat experiencing the bliss of release for a whole week in samādhi. So now, obviously he is not in deep samādhi, but he is in the normal consciousness. Then, while I was alone in seclusion, a course of thought arose in my mind thus: it is painful to dwell without reverence and deference. Nor what ascetic or Brahman can I honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on? Now, this is already a quite powerful statement to me. Now, this is the supreme being in the whole universe. You can't get higher than the Buddha in terms of wisdom, in terms of liberation, in terms of knowledge, understanding, virtue, samādhi, psychic power. And what is he thinking about? He is thinking it is painful to dwell without no respect and reverence. And I think this is something important for us to consider in our society, because I think the quality of respect and reverence and deference is weak in our society. And one reason is that people don't realize that this is actually a state of suffering, not to have anything you can look up to. And even people who may think it's actually great, knock down the tall poppies, as they say, and we are all equal, there's no one better than me. Even the people who say that, if you look in reality, they're still worshipping something. If they don't have any religious conviction, they may just be worshipping sports stars, pop stars, movie stars, influencers, celebrities, isn't it? That's what they put on their wall. They may not have a formal shrine, but they will treat sports stars, Australia particular sports stars, really big. And then global celebrities, pop stars, movie stars, and all these influencers and celebrities. And why? There's just a need in human beings. One isn't happy. It's contrary to what many people think. One may think, if I'm the top dog, and everyone is worshipping me, and I don't have anything to look up to, this is when I'm happy. Now, the Buddha points out the opposite. To have something that is worthy of honor and respect, and then to express that respect, is actually a state of happiness. It makes you happy. It boosts your self-esteem in a wholesome way. It makes you feel good. So understanding that the Buddha now is looking, so who can I actually do that to? Then it occurred to me, the Buddha speaking, then it occurred to me, if my aggregate of virtuous behavior were incomplete, for the sake of completing it, I would honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on another ascetic or Brahman. However, in this world, with its devas, mavas, and Brahma, along this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, devas, and humans, I do not see another ascetic or Brahman more accomplished in virtuous behavior than myself, whom I could honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on. So he's simply looking around, who is his superior, so that by honoring, respecting, and being in dependence on that person, he can complete it. This already indicates to us what is another benefit of honoring and having reverence to a superior being. It helps us to get there ourselves. And what we honor, respect, and revere, this is where our mind will incline. So we got to be careful. If it's the celebrities we honor and respect, this is where we are inclined to. And are these people really worthy of that respect? Do we want to become like that? Many of them have mental problems. Some commit suicide. Just being super famous. And if you look at the bio in Wikipedia of people who were ultra famous, they often didn't end up very well. So whenever we honor, respect, and revere some other being, this is the qualities we will incline to. It helps us to complete that quality. But naturally the Buddha couldn't find anyone who would exceed him in the aggregate of virtuous behavior. The Buddha speaking, if my aggregate of concentration, the samādhi, were incomplete, for the sake of completing it, I would honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on another ascetic or Brahman. And again, the same reflection, he can't find anyone, anywhere in the whole universe, who is superior. And the Buddha has completed the training in samādhi, even more than completed, to the extent of a Buddha even. If my aggregate of wisdom were incomplete, for the sake of completing it, I would honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on another ascetic or Brahman. However, then no one who is exceeding the Buddha in wisdom. If my aggregate of liberation were incomplete, for the sake of completing it, I would honor, respect, and revere another ascetic or Brahman. However, in this world with its devas, Mara, and Brahma, among this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its devas and humans, I do not see another ascetic or Brahman more accomplished in liberation than myself, whom I could honor, respect, and dwell in dependence on. So the Buddha is in trouble now. Can't find anyone who is superior to him in these really crucial qualities: virtue, samādhi, wisdom, and liberation, attainment of freedom of nibbana. So what to do? It occurred to me, let me then honor, respect, and dwell in dependence only on this Dhamma, to which I have become fully enlightened. So not finding any person or being who is superior, the Buddha decides now to continue honoring, respecting, and revering the very Dhamma that he discovered. In this context, the Dhamma doesn't mean so much the scriptural Dhamma, concepts, words, notions, what we have in the Tipitaka, that didn't exist yet. The Buddha hadn't even started teaching. And what the Buddha refers to here is simply the state of freedom, the deathless element, the nibbana, liberation, the released mind, however you wish to call it, that he has experienced in his own heart. Now, this is what he is honoring and revering now. Then Brahma Sahampati, having known with his own mind the reflection in my mind, disappeared from the Brahma world and reappeared before me, just as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm or draw in his extended arm. Brahma Sahampati, does that ring a bell? Who is that? Yes, no, that is the same Brahma who extended the invitation to the Buddha to teach. This is actually later. This is actually happening first, this one. And it's also interesting to see that he can read what the Buddha is thinking. This is one thing why the Tathagata is fully open, and other beings, devas, can obviously read his mind. That's not a problem because the Buddha is only thinking exclusively wholesome and beneficial things. So he has no concern about others reading his mind. Would you feel happy about others reading your mind? Would you feel fully comfortable with that? Nothing you have to hide there? But keep in mind, it's quite common that devas can do that. Maybe you don't maintain mindfulness of that. Maybe think what I think doesn't matter, no one knows. Actually, there are devas in spirits, it's quite normal for them. No issue for the Buddha, and it's all good and wholesome. And that is actually an anagami, Brahma Sahampati, an anagami from a previous Buddha's dispensation. And this is a simile which is often given in the suttas. It's so easy for a Brahma with great psychic powers to disappear from the Brahma world and to literally appear here in this world, just like a strong man that can flex or extend his arm. Easy peasy. He arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, bent down with his right knee on the ground, reverently saluted me and said, "So it is, blessed one, so it is, fortunate one. Bhante, those who were Arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones in the past, those blessed ones too, honored, respected, and revered, and dwelt in dependence only on the Dhamma. Those who will be the Arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones in the future, those blessed ones too will honor, respect, revere, and dwell in dependence only on the Dhamma. Let the Blessed One too, who is at present the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, honor, respect, and dwell in dependence only on the Dhamma. So it's not only our Buddha Gautama who had that reflection, did that. It's actually all Buddhas, the past, all Buddhas to come. They will always do that, honoring, respecting, and revering the Saddhamma. This is what Brahma Sahampati said. Having said this, he further said this. All Buddhas of the distant past and all the Buddhas yet to come, the Buddha of our present time who freed so many from all grief, they live, will live, have always lived, revering the authentic truth, the Dhamma that they realized. This is the nature of enlightened ones. And thus, for your own happiness, for your own lasting benefit, revere the truthful Dhamma here, remember what the Buddha taught. This is what Brahma Sahampati said. He then paid homage to me, and keeping me on his right, he disappeared right there. Then, having acknowledged Brahma's request and what was proper for myself, I honored, respected, and dwelt in dependence only on the Dhamma to which I had become fully enlightened. And now that the Sangha has acquired greatness, I have respect for the Sangha too. The last one is also interesting. Now, there's obviously no monk in the Sangha, and even the chief disciples who are anywhere close in wisdom and so on to the qualities of the Buddha. Now, they have the same release, now they have experienced the same Nibbana. There's no difference in Nibbana, but in terms of wisdom and understanding, no Arahant is close to the Buddha. But even so, the Buddha still has that respect for the Sangha as a community. I find that also quite beautiful. This sutta is obviously later. It starts in Anathapindika's park. So by that time the Sangha was fully established. This is why the Buddha is adding that. When he was sitting under the Ajapala Nigrodha tree, it was shortly after enlightenment, there was no Sangha yet. So obviously he could not feel respect for the Sangha. He hadn't even decided to teach yet. So he started that time only with the Dhamma. But later, the Sangha has acquired greatness. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had lots of material support. It means, in my understanding, that there were many enlightened beings in the Sangha. And the Buddha respects that. Also interesting, the verses of the Brahma. So first, expressing that all the Buddhas do that, past, future, present. And this is the Saddhamma, what is used there in the Pali, Sabbe Saddhamma Karuno. They all revere the Saddhamma. This is one reason why we call our stupa the Saddhamma Chaitya, to raise awareness, to point people to that. Saddhamma is almost synonymous with Dhamma, but just emphasizing that it's a true Dhamma, the authentic Dhamma, undistorted. And the Brahma points out, Esa Buddhana Dhammata, is the nature of the Buddhas. This is why they all do that. You don't have to make a big effort. It's the nature of awakened ones, that they look what they can revere and then not finding anyone superior in the crucial qualities, they go for the Dhamma. However, after that, the Brahma says something which is relevant for everyone. Therefore, for your own happiness, for your own lasting benefit, revere the truthful Dhamma here. Remember what the Buddha taught. Now this is bringing it down now a bit for more ordinary mortals, not Buddhas. And it's good for us to do that. It's for our long-lasting happiness and welfare, to revere the Dhamma and to remember what the Buddha taught. If we haven't attained any of the stages of enlightenment yet, then obviously the object of honor and respecting and revering in terms of Dhamma is more the conceptual Dhamma, because a state of liberation, we don't have that yet, so it's a bit difficult to direct it there. Of course we can do that as a theoretical exercise, but if one hasn't had any of the stages of enlightenment yet, then obviously the conceptual Dhamma is very important. Whereas someone who has already realized full Nibbana, and for them the more important one is that state of release they have experienced in their heart. And the verses the Brahma is speaking, we will put on bronze plaques outside the stupa on 3 sides. On the 4th side, simply the quote where it comes from, to explain why it is Saddhamma Cetya, and also to hopefully inspire people to honor and respect and revere the true, authentic Dhamma. Why is that so beneficial? Why does the Brahma say, for your own happiness, for your own lasting benefit? Why is that so good for you to revere the authentic Dhamma? First of all, it's good karma. There's obviously the superior, the supreme state in the universe, the state of release, liberation. And whenever you express respect, reverence, faith, devotion, and so on to that supreme Dhamma, you make lots of good karma. But even more important, as we discussed, when you respect and revere something, your mind will incline in that direction. If your mind inclines in that direction, you will hopefully study the Dhamma. Now, this is why the Brahma here says, Sarang Buddhana Sasanang, remembering the Buddha's teaching, learning it, studying it, reciting it, learning it by heart, discussing it. So that is the function of this stupa there. It's not just that we have a nice, beautiful looking stupa. Nothing wrong about that, it's certainly inspiring, but the deeper meaning is that people going there and developing that respect and deference to the Dhamma, that it leads them on to actually study that Dhamma, to remember it, to learn it by heart, to discuss it, to investigate it, and then to practice it, to turn it from the scriptural Dhamma into experiential Dhamma in your heart by realizing these stages of awakening. So that is the hope for the stupa. This is why it also doesn't have to be that big. The end is not the point whether the stupa is particularly big. The point is that it should reach the heart of people, so that they gain inspiration. Gain inspiration to practice and then to realize the true Dhamma in their heart. Okay, a few minutes left. Is there any comments on that? Or? I want to put some on the sides, there's already these niches, and on the side of these bronze plaques I hope to put the Tivatana, and then also the Deva we already have on the pool fence around our Bodhi tree. I think you all know the pool fence. We had to put a pool fence around the Bodhi tree. People may wonder why do they put a pool fence around the Bodhi tree, and a weird idea. But we had possum going in there and almost killing the tree, eating all the new shoots. It's not an easy exercise to keep a possum out of a tree, but the pool fence actually worked. And then we have the Eightfold Path engraved on the glass, and then in writing each path factor. And then on the side, Gabi did a nice little Deva worshipping. So we will alternate that, the Tivatana on both sides, and then the Deva worshipping. And then hopefully when people go there and read that, they will feel inclined to honor, respect, and dwell independence of the Saddhamma, the true, authentic Dhamma. And then hopefully realize it one day. You have to learn it, study it, remember it, investigate it. You can discuss it, Dhammasakacha. You observe it in your experience. Even if we can't realize the stages of enlightenment yet, there are other things in the Dhamma which we can already verify by our own experience. Just practice generosity and notice how your mind is uplifted and you're more happy. And then you notice, it actually works, it's true. Just keep the precepts. Now, like a day like today, when people do the one-day retreat, and you go home, and you look at the fridge, but you can't eat anything because you're on 8 precepts. So your body the stomach may not be that happy, but you may notice at the same time your mind is actually very happy. Because you have been practicing and you continue practicing into the night. And this is little things where you can verify that the teaching, the Saddhamma actually works. And that gives you the confidence, exactly. But the sequence you recited, that's what you do with the Saddhamma. Sadhu, someone sharing when she practices 8 precepts, she doesn't feel hungry in the evening. Of course, because your mind is focused on internal development. Also often we have to eat because of stress, and often it's mental stress, because you work very hard mentally, and then you feel like you really need to eat now because it's a big effort. But of course the mental stress doesn't take that many calories, and this is why one often then gains weight. But if you spend the day in meditation and practicing, hopefully one is quite calm, and then one also needs less food. Yeah. Well, the first factor for stream anti-sotapatti anga is sappurisa sangseva, associating with someone who has actually realized the Dhamma to some state. It's not a fully technical term. Sappurisa can also be generally a good person, but mostly it means someone who has realized the Dhamma. And from that flows naturally the second one, Saddhamma Savanam. So in particular, as long as you have people who have realized the Dhamma, you tend to have the Saddhamma around, because they have the true Saddhamma in their heart. So you can't fully separate these the two aspects. The one is the Saddhamma in the sense of the state of liberation, which the enlightened beings have in their heart, which they have realized in their heart. The other is the teaching of the Buddha, and also the great Ajahns, the conceptual expression of that. And both are important. The first one is obviously the ultimate one and the more important one. But if you don't have that, then obviously the scriptural Dhamma and also the Dhamma, the teaching of someone who has the real Dhamma in their heart, when they speak, that comes out in some way. And even if they're not such excellent teachers linguistically in terms of verbal and talking prowess and skill, associating with them usually this Dhamma in their heart now that comes out in some way, and you get quite a bit from that. Yeah. So both aspects are important, and the Buddha talks about both. And when he talks about Saddhamma, both are kind of included. The conceptual teaching, which we now also have in scriptures, and of course on YouTube and so on, which you can get when you talk to an enlightened being, when they teach you, and then the one in the heart. Everything is meant by that. Yeah.